But in fact, your most recent work is Handful of Dust, wasn't it?
Yes, that you've seen, or I hope you've seen.
Well, yes, it's certainly been here. Was that a bit like going back to your childhood? Lots of big houses and riding to hounds and all that?
Yeah, except, you know, hunting was sort of better in my childhood because in movies you have to do things over and over again. So the hounds were going crazy, the horses were going crazy.
So it wasn't the way you remembered it at all?
No, not in the old days, but the port was flowing quite freely.
Yes. Was it an estate in the wilds, far from anywhere, where you lived in Ireland?
In Galway, yes. Actually about 2 hours from Galway, Loch Ray.
And was it full of glamorous visitors?
I'm afraid so, yes.
But your father, John Huston, must, of course, have been away most of the time, or a great deal of it.
Yes, he worked a good deal of the time, I think, in order to support it. But it was very beautiful and very remote, and we were extremely spoiled.
He came home bearing gifts, of course.
Yes, he'd go off to Africa and return with parrots on his hand, and go to Rome and return in black leather suits. I think he and Tom Jones were the only people in those days to actually dress this way.
Were you aware of his films, though, when you were a child?
Only aware of his films. I think, well, he had a projector at home, and so I'd seen African Queen maybe 25 to 30 times before I ever saw anything. When I first saw Gidget Goes to Hawaii, I thought it was a masterpiece because it was
It's all you'd ever seen, yes.
Yeah.
How did you feel about moving to London?
I wasn't all that keen on it to begin with because I was basically raised in the country, and I got to like it a little too much pretty soon. I went to a variety of schools, and actually I was an absentee at a variety of schools, and I had a good time eventually.
Eventually? It sounds like all the time to me.
Well, yeah, I worked on it.
Are you a city boy, Griff?
Yes, some of the time, yeah. And then some of the time I'm the country boy, you know. I'm in Celebs. No, I don't care, me.
Well, that seems to cover it, doesn't it? Anjelica, did you take it for granted that you would be offered a role by your father in the fullness of time?
Well, he offered me a role when I was 15, and it was not a tremendous success. I think I made it very difficult for him. And I was sort of considered too young at the time to have too many opinions, and my opinion being mainly that the script was no good, and so it didn't turn out very well. I don't think I expected a whole lot after that because I'd sort of been a pain.
It was a miserable experience for all then, was it?
It can't have been great for him, no.
What about reviews?
Reviews were not great. They called me wooden and unattractive. I still stutter when I say this.
Every word
yes, etched in forever in my memory.
Wooden and unattractive. What's the worst you've been called, Griff? It's a good deal worse than
That's
that.
good. No, yes, exactly. Wooden would be quite good.
Unattractive compliment.
Yes. I think the sort of performance we'd expect from an understudy, I think, was one of the reviews I got for something I did. If this dismal little review, that was the first time I came into London. This dismal little review, it started. I can't remember how it went on. But,
Well, that was the review, of course,
exactly,
not
that was
the
bit.
review.
The review of the review.
That's right.
Yes. The next time you worked with your dad was a much happier experience, wasn't it? It was the film that I mentioned, Prizzi's Honour.
Indeed it was. Yeah, we had a wonderful time on that film because I not only worked with my father, I also worked with my consort, Mr. Nicholson.
Consort.
And it's better than those other words, isn't it?
Paramour, yes.
And that was great. We ate a lot on that movie, and I'm generally happy when I'm eating.
Was this to get into the Italian feel?
Yes, many meatballs, and it was very good. Very good.
But your father didn't actually employ you in that film, did he?
Well, my father actually had read the book in the first place and then given it to John, and John came to me with the script and asked if I'd be interested in playing it. So it was kind of roundabout, but it was a nice approach anyway.
Apart from having a very nice time, that won you an Oscar, didn't it?
Yes, that was a nice time too.
Now, the boys, of course, John, your father, and Jack, they won nothing. Did that spoil the celebration slightly?
Not in the least. I was well prepared for that. And they weren't going to rain on my parade.
They told you, though. I mean, before it happens, it's not a surprise for you, is it?
Well, it was...
You know, on the Oscars. They give you the wink. They say, yeah, I think you might have got it. You don't...
No.
So if you hadn't been there...
In fact, if you think you've got it, you've really had it.
You're done for.
And it was terrible because, first of all, I went up and forgot my speech and the usual thing, and then you're supposed to go off backstage. And I, in my dementia, kind of ran back into the audience and holding the thing, passed by my father and said, look, you know, and he's sitting there with tears pouring down his face. What's wrong with him? And then I made it over to Jack, and he was sort of mopping up under his dark glasses. This is really strange.
Is it true that you
Mm.
made a note of the serial number or something? Is that right?
Yes, so that you have to send it away to be engraved. So I definitely, I put down the serial number just in case. You have to be careful.
It right one back.
Well, you know, I wanted to be sure it had my moist hand imprint on it. So.
What was your speech in the end, having forgotten the original one?
I don't know. I thanked some people, I think.
Parents and all that.
Something, God, yes.
But it did, of course, apart from your own personal pleasure, it did bring you out from the shadow of those two giants, really, I suppose they are, your father and your lover.
That's a good word.
You're getting excited now.
Rather excited. Yeah, not bad shadows to be in, however. I mean, I don't have a lot to complain about, really.
You worked on your father's last film, didn't you? I mean, he was very ill at that time. Was it distressing?
Yes.
Was he very frail?
He was very frail, mentally stronger than anyone around. I mean, it was sort of embarrassing to be walking around on your feet because it seemed that everyone should be in a wheelchair with tubes in their noses. He was frail physically, but unbelievable. I mean, so strong and so astute mentally. It was inconceivable that he would die eventually because, of course, he'd been dying for about 30 years. He had very bad emphysema, but it was sheer will that kept him going. And movies, you know, just so long as we had something else for him to do, the feeling was that, you know, he'd be okay.
And a quick viewing of African Queen to cheer him up every now and then. Was there any truth in the story that on his deathbed he asked Jack Nicholson to marry you?
It's complete fiction. First of all, because he died so often. I mean, he went into intensive care, I'd say at least 7 to 8 times, you know, in that year alone. And because one wouldn't want to cause a great furor and a great fuss, one would sort of wait and see how things went. And in this instance, I'd been on the phone to Jack a lot, who was in California. We were in Rhode Island filming Mr. North, my little brother Danny's film. And it looked as though he'd made it through, and he'd been out of hospital for 2 days, and sort of died in the night. So the idea of Jack was never there. It's complete fiction. I'm sure he had a lot more important things to think about than my impending nuptials.
But he has proposed quite regularly anyway, hasn't he?
Every day on his knees.
What do you say? You don't say, let's do it.
I always say, let's do it.
But not get married.
I might not be able to say, let's do it, if we got married. I'd like to keep my options open.
There was a lovely quote, which I hope was true, that your father said, that in any case, you and Jack have been together so long that your relationship has outlasted most Hollywood marriages anyway.
Actually, the quote was any of his marriages, and probably most of them all put together, yeah.